All right, here we go, everyone. Welcome to oh my gosh, Scott, what is this? The 18th?
I think this is the 18th. Yes, because it's
Yeah,
between 17, my favorite number, and 19, Stephen King's favorite numbers.
there we go. That sounds like destiny to me right there. So this is the 18th episode of Dear Dr. Fantasy. And as my very special guest today, everyone, here is Scott, aka the Bald Booktuber. Hello, Scott. How are you?
I'm excellent, Philip. Thanks so much for having me. This is a real pleasure.
Cool. Awesome. And I want to point out something right away. You and I both have plants in the background,
That's right. Mine
right?
is a product of my wife being the decorator of the house. I don't know
Oh,
if that's
yeah. Same
okay.
here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I have pretty much terrible taste. So anything that looks good in my home is definitely due to my wife's much superior aesthetic sense for decor and all that. So yeah,
Yeah,
have to give credit where it's due. But
indeed.
but it is so great to see you, and I'm so happy to have this opportunity to chat with you. It's so wonderful to interact with all our friends on YouTube. We have a wonderful community with
Agreed.
just loads of really great people, and it's just great to interact with people in the comments. But it's also very special to get a chance to talk with people in discussions and stuff like that. So
Yeah, for
this is
sure.
this is really cool for me to get to talk to you one on one.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's talk about you a little bit if you don't
Mhm.
mind.
Sure.
And let's start with my standard question for my guests, and this might lead to also why you decided to throw your hat in the ring and start a YouTube channel and or a booktube channel. And so yeah, what are the books that are behind Scott the person that have led to this channel, the Bald Booktuber? What are the books that have inspired you? And going on the premise that you are what you read.
Yeah. So my aunt got me a copy of Narnia Chronicles when I was probably like 6 or 7, I think. And I just tore through that series. I loved it. I fell in love with Aslan. It was magical. So
Yeah.
um, that type of portal escapism really appealed to me.
Okay.
Uh, and at that, I didn't know what to read next or whatever. I was reading some. They're called. The author's name is Matt Christopher. He writes like sports books for kids. So I was reading some of those,
Nice.
uh, which I haven't read since I was a kid. But I didn't know what to do next. But my parents, who are not big readers, but both read Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and had
Uh,
these battered paperback copies. And that was kind of the next evolution of my reading journey, as with so many of us, I'm sure.
yeah. Do
Uh,
you remember how old you were when you read it?
yeah, The Hobbit, I was probably, I don't know, 10 or 11. And then Lord of the Rings shortly thereafter in my early teens. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Uh,
Good age
I was
for it.
kind of I was the shy kid always with the book with me and not really interacting with the adults, but just kind of looking up at them briefly between pages and that
I
kind of
think
thing.
there might be a few of us on this platform who were the person sitting in the corner with their nose in a book. There might be a few of us around here.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common.
Yeah.
And then, I read some other things. In high school, I got into Ayn Rand a lot, and that's still one of my favorite authors. So I really like her stuff as far as non fantasy goes. Um, I still say that Atlas Shrugged is my favorite book.
Wow.
So that's, and it was just, I read it when I was 18 or 19, and I've read
Uh-huh.
it a couple of times since, and it was just formidable for me.
Yeah,
I
I
was
think
looking
that's an
for kind
interesting
of,
age,
oh,
right?
go ahead.
18, 19. There's I think a lot of us would sort of look back at right around that age range and see what we read during that time somehow
Mhm.
had just a outsized impact on our development. So
Yeah.
probably a very important age for what we were reading at that time. Yeah.
And then I was looking for the next thing. So I didn't know what to do next. So I just kind of wandered around at Barnes and Noble. That was kind of my TBR process at the time.
Uh-huh.
And I found the Shannara book. And I still really like Shannara, but
Uh-huh.
I think I've kind of outgrown it a little bit, but it felt like Lord of the Rings, so I
Oh
enjoyed it.
yeah, I mean the first book is it's basically a good it's an action-packed copy in some ways of Lord of the Rings, in many ways beat for beat, character for character.
Yeah.
But I've heard, and I read it too when I was younger, and I was I guess maybe I was a little bit of a snob. I don't know, but I read Sword of Shannara. I was like,
Uh-huh.
this is cool, but it's so derivative of
Derivative.
Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings. And I thought, well, if this is what it is, then I just think I'll stick to Lord of the Rings. Thank you very much. But I've heard from many fans of Terry Brooks and the Shannara series that actually he does his own thing
Yeah.
afterwards. So it's something I'm considering eventually going back to try more of the Shannara books to see where he takes that world.
Yeah, I like Sword a lot. Elfstones, I think, is his best book that I've
Ah,
read. That's the second book. That's the
okay.
one that the terrible adaptation got adapted from. MTV made a very, very bad adaptation.
MTV, huh?
Not good, and not who you want adapting a show, but that's okay. Um, I think that's his best book. But I like that whole trilogy. Wish Song is the third book, and then I enjoyed the next two trilogies. And then it became formulaic, I think, and just the same
Oh,
thing over and over again for me. Different
uh-huh.
people, different experiences. I know Sarah really enjoys Shannara as well, so she could
Sarah
probably,
Reeds, yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Okay,
Um,
and she has pretty good taste, so
she does,
I tend to trust Sarah,
yeah,
unless she's pulling a joke on me or something. But yeah,
fantastic channel, and she
yeah,
has wonderful Dresden opinions. So
yeah,
continue on the track. So
yep.
after that, again, just me wandering around, and then I found the series, and that's Song of Ice and Fire. That's kind of my thing. Song of Ice and Fire became my brand, for lack of a better word. So
Yeah.
pretty much everything has been a straight track from there. Every Pretty much every big fantasy author I love was George recommending them on his blog. So I
Okay.
found Jim Butcher through George. I found Joe Abercrombie through George. I found Robin
Wow.
Hobb through George. Scott Lynch. Everybody that I love. That's all branching from George saying these guys are great. Check them out, guys and gals. So
Fantasy as it was meant to be.
as it ought to be written. That's
Yeah,
correct.
there
Yeah.
we go. Fantasy as it ought to be written. Yeah, that's sort of become a bit of a running joke, I guess.
Indeed. Yes.
But still, I think nobody would refuse an endorsement from GRRM. I'm sure, right?
Excellent taste. Yeah, excellent
Yeah.
taste. And he reads widely. It's not just fantasy. He's a huge Bernard Cornwell fan.
Uh-huh.
Who's somebody I want to get into a lot. I think I'm going to do Warlord Chronicles in December. I haven't 100%
Cool.
decided, but
Yeah, I need to read
uh,
more Cornwell myself. But yeah, I mean, you're so right. George Martin is actually very, very well read. He did his homework
yeah,
in terms of the historical background, and that's something that I respect a lot. And I love A Song of Ice and Fire. I've read the series, the first book actually, A Game of Thrones.
yep,
I'm not even sure, probably 5 or 6 times I've read it,
yep.
and I taught it in my fantasy novels course. So obviously I like it.
For sure.
And I read all the others at least twice.
Yeah,
So yeah, so it's a series that I enjoy too a lot. So we'll come back to it though, because I do
yeah.
want to get your thoughts on this new TV show that people are talking about.
I haven't heard of it. What's the show? I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
No, I would love to. Yes, we'll talk about House of the
But let's
Dragon.
continue with your journey first, and we'll circle back.
Yeah. And then just odds and ends. I'm a Stephen King fan. I enjoy his stuff.
Yeah.
I just completed, as you did, Dark Tower, which was
Yeah.
fantastic.
I actually still have the last book to read, which
Oh, do you? Okay.
yeah, yeah. But I'm really excited for it, and I'm gonna be. Let's see. I'm finishing Wars of Light or the Curse of
Hmm.
Mistwraith, and then I have a really, really promising self-published book to read, and then I'm gonna probably read Dark Tower or the last book, seventh book. Yeah. So
Beautiful. Yeah.
yeah,
It does some really cool stuff in that book. I
nice.
was mixed on it. I didn't enjoy the first quarter of it or so, but I'm also not the biggest Song of Susanna fan that's ever lived. So,
Oh, see, yeah,
uh,
I think that tends to be the case where if you don't like Song of Susanna, you're not gonna love the last book. But if you do, and I'm one who's like,
yeah,
I
yeah.
love this book. I really like Song of Susanna. So I'm thinking I'm gonna really enjoy the last book, but we'll see.
I didn't dislike it. What I disliked was Win Through the Keyhole, which I read last. That I couldn't get into Win Through.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I loved it, but it's very different tonally from
Yeah,
the rest of the series. Although I will say, King seems to do something different with every book. It's like
which
I
I
don't know
love.
what's going to happen in that series. It's he just goes where he feels like it. Yeah, it seems, and for me, it's working. But yeah.
I enjoyed your review of Win Through the Keyhole much more than the book itself. That's what I'll say. It
Well,
was my
glad you
least
enjoyed
favorite
the
book
review.
last month. So yeah, it
Yeah.
wasn't what it didn't work for me.
Huh.
It wasn't a bad book. It just wasn't what I wanted. We start with
Yeah.
Cotted and then we don't talk to the Cotted again until like I don't know. I
He
wanted
does
more
that
from my,
in Wizard and Glass too, of course.
which is my favorite book of the year, and I enjoy that backstory, but for whatever reason, I just didn't connect with this one. So who knows?
Well, yeah, I mean, there, like I said, I think it's the tonal difference, and I feel like Wind Through the Keyhole is it's kind of whimsical and
Mm-hmm.
more fairy tale like, and more, I don't know, speaking to the child in us, perhaps. I don't
Sure.
know, but I loved it. I just felt there are certain books they tend to be short, and they tend to be kind of dreamlike that I
Mm-hmm.
really enjoy as something a bit different. And they
Sure.
often sort of touch on fairy tale kind of vibe. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, but it is so different from the rest of the Dark Tower series, I think.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
I've gotten into Robert Mccammon a lot lately. He's becoming one of my
Yeah, I
favorite.
hear a lot of, I mean, of course, Mike read, what was the book? The
Swans and Boy's
Swan
Life.
Song. Yeah, Boy's Life and then Swan Song, right? Yeah, so I've been hearing a lot of buzz, and a lot of people feel like that's very impactful, right? His writing.
Really, really good. It feels like King in some ways, but I think King is probably a superior storyteller. I think McCammon is the better writer. Um,
Interesting. Huh.
I know that came up a little bit last night in your talk on Steve's channel.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I wasn't able to tune in for all of it, but I heard bits and pieces of that part of it. But
Yeah.
um, I think McCammon is an amazing writer. His prose are just delicious.
Wow.
Um,
Good. Huh.
and speaking of amazing writers, my favorite writer, Miss Robin Hobb, the Queen. She is my very
Oh yes, you are the one of the greatest, I think, along with Derry.
yeah.
Probably the two of you are the greatest Robin Hobb advocates. Although there are lots of others. I think Jimmy, of course, is a huge
Jimmy
fan,
Bishop.
and yeah, of course, Jake Bishop. Yeah,
Yeah.
so there are lots of us who love Robin Hobb, but I think that you and Derry probably win the prize for the advocates of the Queen of Fantasy. But
The difference being she's the scholar. If I had a question, I would go directly to Derry and
Derry,
ask.
yeah,
So she is the historian of Hobb. I'm just a fan. So
yeah,
that's about all I have. But that was another one. George was a big advocate for Hobb back before anybody was reading her or knew who she was.
yeah,
They came up together. I think Assassin's Apprentice and Game of Thrones were within a year of each other.
yeah.
And
That's
they
probably
are
right.
very close friends, which is cool.
Ah,
So I followed his blog religiously back in those days, and mostly
yeah.
it was either I'm working on the next book, here were the NFL scores, or Robin Hobb is the queen. Like those were the three possible options you would get out of one of his
Those
blogs.
were the themes on the blog,
Yeah,
and not a blog. Yeah,
not a blog, yeah.
yeah. Huh. Yeah. No, I mean, I have no argument there. She's in my after reading Lives of Traders. I loved the Farseer trilogy too.
For sure.
And for me, it was an impressive trilogy in so many ways. But what really sold me was Live Ship Traders in my case. I really
It's
thought, wow,
incredible.
this is mind-blowingly brilliant character work. So, and I expect when I finally get around to reading the rest of the Realm of the Elderlings, I will be even probably more invested. So, yeah.
I think so. She ties the series together in a really unique way.
Hmm.
I love Live Ships. It's one of my favorite series ever, but I
Hmm.
enjoy Fit the Fool more. That's my favorite trilogy ever.
Okay.
And I enjoy Tawny Man more. That's one of my
Yeah.
favorite trilogies. So
Yeah.
um, like I didn't think you could get higher than Live Ship Traders. I had read Farseer and Live Ship 20 years ago or whatever, and then I went through all of it last year, and I was like, this is even better than I thought it was going to be. So
wow, yeah. I'm really I hear probably among the fans. I think the two candidates for the favorite trilogies are Tawny Man and then
yeah,
Fitz and the Fool.
seems to be the case.
Yeah, a lot of people seem to really just feel like those are the very best. Whereas not so many people are keen on the tetralogy, the
Rainwild.
Wild Chronicles. Yeah, that seems
So
universally, and it's still Hobb, so it's great, but universally the least favorite. Is it your least favorite part of the whole realm of the Elderlings?
it is my least favorite. The first book I think is pretty rough. The Dragon Keeper is not a book I enjoyed very much.
Okay.
I enjoyed it that it was Hobb. That was what I could say that I liked about it. Dragon Haven, the second book, was slightly better, but it was pretty clear that they should have been one book, not two, and that was a popular decision.
Okay.
So that was like, but then you get to City of Dragons and Blood of Dragons, and I think both are just fantastic books.
Okay. Well, then and I've never ever heard a Hobb fan say you can just skip Ringwild Chronicles. You know, I've never heard that.
You could, although some of the stuff in Fitz and the Fool won't hit if you do that, which is why I always advocate publication order always. It would be, I think I would liken it to skipping the standalones in First Law. Theoretically, you could, but it's a very bad idea.
Yeah, I think you could read Age of Madness without reading those standalones, but you would miss a lot.
Correct.
Yeah, you would miss a lot of certain characters and even some of the carryover characters from the very first trilogy. They get developed in those standalones. And
one in particular.
I mean, I don't want to say we're avoiding spoilers, but you know who
for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
So yeah, I think you would miss a lot if you didn't read the standalones. And even I would say you should read the short story collection, Sharp Ends.
I like
before reading the Age of Madness trilogy. Yeah,
I would agree.
Yeah, because there's a lot that even there where you get little dimensions added to characters that you thought you knew, and then you get these glimpses of them at different times, different periods of their lives, and I think it's pretty cool. Although I will say, among all the First Law books, which I love, the 10 books, the short story collection is my least favorite.
I think that's fair. It's kind of tied with Red Country for me.
We're on one there. Yeah.
I don't dislike either of them, but they are the least of what I enjoy. Age of Madness as a trilogy is a favorite of mine.
Same here. Yeah.
And Wisdom of Crowds, I just think was brilliant. Just absolutely magical from start to finish. So.
Wow, it sounds like you and I have pretty much equal First Law opinions. So yeah, I mean,
close.
I'm exactly where you are. I feel like the Sharp Ends is my least favorite, though I'm so glad I read it. I enjoyed it.
I like the Bethod story a lot. The one with Bethod.
Oh my goodness. There are a couple in there. Some people like the everybody seems to like the one you just referenced. That's probably a huge favorite. And the Galacta one, a lot of people like, but I didn't really like that one as much. But anyway, it's quibbling. It's still Abercrombie. It's still brilliant. But that, and then after that, my least favorite would definitely be Red Country, which for whatever reason didn't click with me as much as the rest of his books. And I love the other two standalones. But
The Heroes is one of my favorite individual books. I adore that book. So
yeah. But Age of Madness, to me, and I know this isn't the most popular Abercrombie opinion,
but I agree with it. I
feel like Age of Madness is Abercrombie at his best so far.
Agree. I know Jake feels the same way. That's a Jake Bishop opinion.
Jake Bishop? Okay, good. Well, he's a smart guy, so
he knows a couple things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because, and I'll say why I think this. even though a lot of people, and I think there's a nostalgia factor that is sort of weighs in on the original trilogy being a
Yeah,
lot
for sure.
for a lot of people their favorite.
Hmm.
But I will say, in my opinion, that Abercrombie's character work, which is always brilliant, has reached new heights in Age of Madness.
Agree.
And I will also say that he has definitely produced his most brilliant, strongest female characters in Age of
Yeah.
Madness.
Savine is great.
Oh,
She's so
she's the if I mean, there's no one protagonist of the trilogy, but if I had to say who's the protagonist, that would be my answer.
yeah.
And then finally, I think that Abercrombie really upped his game in terms of thematic elements in
Mhm.
this last trilogy of his, Age of Madness. Clearly, I think he was trying to do more with the themes, and not that there's no absence of theme in
Sure.
the other books, but I think he was a lot more thoughtful about Age of Madness, where he's doing a lot of stuff on the issues such as class, right?
Mhm.
Class hierarchy is big in there, and the
Yeah.
impact on society and on individuals of this culture that has gone for a more industrial
Mhm.
capitalist kind of model for their society. They're going headlong, actually, at a full speed into this, and what happens to people as a society changes, and there are winners and losers. There tend to be a lot more losers than winners.
Yeah, that's for
And so it's I think it's very Dickensian. I mean, Abercrombie clearly read some like Elizabeth Gaskell's North and South, some
mm,
Victorian era novels where they really delve into this stuff about class, and there's stuff about immigration and sexuality, and there's, and it's not like he's hitting you over the head with these themes, but
right.
they're in there, and I think he does a really good job of weaving them in, actually.
He has a pretty light hand, I would say. That it never,
Yeah.
never feels heavy-handed. It never feels like he's beating you over the head or bludgeoning you with anything. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to his new trilogy.
Oh, I am too. So excited.
I don't know what exactly we're going to get, but I think it'll be really cool to see him delve
Yeah.
out the world. I read the first two of the Shattered Sea, and I'm not in
Hmm.
love with that series. I like one character a lot, and that character's not present for enough of it. And I haven't so far gone back to book 3 yet. So
Book 3. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I haven't tried the Shattered Sea trilogy yet. The Half a Prince, Half a King, or
yep,
whatever it is.
that
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
The King, I
Uh,
think, is the first one. Half a World and Half a War, I think, are the three.
okay, okay, yeah, yeah. I haven't tried it yet. I'm a little leery of it because I love the First Law stuff so
Mm,
much.
yeah.
And I'm afraid of being disappointed by something that Abercrombie wrote. Maybe that's it. I don't know. But I should just try it, because I should
Yeah.
trust as an author, and I know that he has said that he's not really that on board with the YA label, that this was just sort of
Right.
a marketing thing, and that it's not even considered YA in every place, every country. But
I don't know what YA really is, but
I
it
don't
didn't
either.
feel YA to me. Like there's still people getting their heads lopped off and stuff like that. That doesn't feel YA to me. Maybe it, but
Is it as okay? Let me ask you this then. Do you feel like, based on the first two, that this world is as grim as the First Law world?
I think the world is probably as grim. I think it's peopled by more on the continuum than just gray. I think there's light and dark
Okay,
people, in terms of kind of their morality and these kinds of things. Uh,
interesting. Okay,
and it's a little bit cliched how the first one starts, and I won't go into spoilers or whatnot, but it feels very familiar to a lot of 80s fantasy and that kind of stuff.
okay,
Feels familiar tropes, and it doesn't kind of knock the pieces off like First Law does in that first trilogy, where it sort of feels initially like quest fantasy, and that's not obviously what it is at all, right? right? So
Yeah, because Abercrombie is famous for his subversion of
right.
tropes in First Law, and you don't feel like he was subverting as much in the
At least not of the books that I read. It
okay.
felt pretty straight line to me. And
Okay.
maybe I wasn't reading it the way it was intended. I don't know, but and it could also be that I just wanted more First Law and I didn't get it. That's a
Uh-huh.
possibility. So who
Yeah.
knows? I
Yeah,
do
I'll have
plan
to.
the third book, but the people that I've talked to that did said it was not the ending that they wanted. So we'll see.
Interesting. Huh. Well, I'm gonna try it someday because I do think that Abercrombie is just a brilliant writer, and
I do too.
I'm curious too, just to see how I'll like it. And the First Law world. I asked you about the grimness of the Shattered Sea world because
Mhm.
it is one of the grimmest, bleakest worlds, and yet it doesn't feel like it because his humor is just so brilliant. I mean, I think I actually don't hesitate to say that I feel like Abercrombie is the most brilliant humorist in fantasy. He's just
He's the best humor writer I've read, period, not just in fantasy.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
I
And the
agree.
thing is, I I feel like that the characters in First Law all end up so alienated, and it would be so depressing if it weren't so funny, you know?
Yeah, which I like that. I like that he has those breaths, and I'm laughing hysterically at stuff that is a little bit gallows humor at times, but it still makes me laugh. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I just think he's the insights into human nature, and
Mm-hmm.
it is a very grim view of human nature,
Yeah,
and it feels like we're very. I mean, it's a very modern view in some ways too. I think
sure.
the idea of us as being essentially isolated and alienated, and the quest for meaning failing again and again, and these
Yep.
characters who make these attempts at connecting with one another that inevitably fall apart. And I mean, it's just it would be so depressing if he weren't so funny at the same
Yeah,
time. So it just he's so good at showing our absurdity, and
I
even
think
when
so.
he does action, even when he's in the middle of a battle, you're more likely to see a character die due to some like clumsy misstep, you know,
Yeah,
rather than
great.
some skillful, sword waving kind of. It's just like a very it's a view of us that emphasizes our awkwardness, right?
Yeah,
So which makes me laugh, and probably I'm laughing at myself sometimes too when I'm when I'm laughing at the characters. Which is good, I think we need to laugh during our lives. So,
yeah,
so
I agree. I think the reason I love the heroes so much is that Calder is a character that I just despise, obviously in the first
mhm,
trilogy, and then
mhm.
he becomes sympathetic somehow, and I really enjoy his character in the heroes. I,
Yeah.
I don't know why that is. I really enjoy every time Calder's on page in the heroes.
Yeah, it's a skillful author who can really pull that off.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I feel like a lot of authors attempt to do with varying levels of success.
Yeah.
And Abercrombie's brilliant at it. I would say Hobb, of course. My favorite writer, Stephen Erickson, I think is
Mm-hmm.
just absolutely the top of my list at achieving that effect of changing my view of a character.
Yeah.
It's something that he does, I think, very consciously in his books. But yeah.
That was a mountain I was able to climb last year too. I finally completed the Book of the Fallen. So
Wow. Congratulations. Yeah.
I've been trying for 20 years, so it's good to finally get that under my belt.
Yeah.
I read Gardens of the Moon when it was new or close to new, and I've
Wow.
always book. I
Huh.
know a lot of. I'm going to say Malazan because that's how I've always said it. So I'm
Oh,
sorry,
that's fine with me. I don't care. Yeah.
but I know a lot of fans of the series don't enjoy book one, and I think Gardens is just a brilliant book. I have
Yeah.
revisited it times, so
Yeah.
um, and I didn't enjoy Dead House Gates the first time, but the subsequent times I've really, really loved it.
Uh-huh.
And then Memories of Ice is kind of where I'm 100% bought in. I adore that book. I think it takes everything
Yeah.
that's great
Yeah.
in first books, and yeah, Had a great time. Toll the Hounds is my favorite overall. I really love Toll the Hounds.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it was a good journey. My wife will occasionally, Debbie will say, "Well, what's it about?" And I'll be like, "Well, what is the fall of the Roman Empire about?" I don't know how to answer that.
Yep.
But
I've
yeah,
heard that question too a few times. What's it about? Like this 3.5 million words. You want me to just summarize this? But I find it very cool that Toll the Hounds is your favorite. And I can never say which book is my favorite
sure.
in Malazan Book of the Fallen, because it's like whichever one I happen to be reading.
Yeah,
Although I will say that Toll the Hounds is distinct from all the other books, I think, because of how deeply it engages with the intertwined themes of grief and love,
right.
and how just skillfully and deliberately Stephen Erickson examines how our grief and love are really two sides of a coin, and you can't have one without the other. That's just the nature of life. And sometimes it's really beautiful, and sometimes it's devastating, and you see the characters and their various struggles and their various responses to grief, some of which are not very healthy. And some of which are very touching, and it's just such an amazing journey. And I think anybody who has experienced loss could potentially, I mean, maybe for some people it won't resonate, but wow, it was a book that really I found very helpful in
Yep.
dealing with my own losses in my life. As I'm sure Stephen Erickson, famously, it's well known that
Yeah.
his father had passed away, and that this was his. And so, on some level, I think it was probably his way of exploring his own grief and dealing with it. So,
Hmm.
yeah. So, is that why the Toll the Hounds is your favorite, or is there
Um,
other reason? Are there other reasons?
more service level, I think. So I love characters and I love specific characters, and
Ah,
I'm a huge Animander Rake fan, and he's in that a fair amount, as I recall.
yeah, oh,
And
yeah, yeah.
I like seeing Hood on screen. Hood
Oh,
is just
yeah,
cool.
yeah. That's
You
good
know.
stuff. Yeah.
There's a very specific scene that is very memorable between the two of them.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I can't help laughing when I think of that scene.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So I love
yeah.
that. I really like Midnight Tides a lot too. Hole and Bug, or they make me laugh so much. So
Oh, yeah. So you're an appreciator of Malazan humor, then.
I am. I know not everybody is, but for whatever reason, he makes me laugh. So that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, I'm so with you, because we've talked about it a lot. We meaning people on
yeah,
YouTube who talk about Malazan, but the humor is such an essential aspect. Like with Abercrombie,
sure.
with Abercrombie's world being so bleak, the humor really it makes those books not just readable but brilliant. And I think something similar of humor in Malazan.
Yeah.
Although to me, the Malazan uh, world is less bleak than the First Law world, although
No, I
horrible
agree.
things happen in both. Really, I
Yeah.
mean, no argument there. Terrible things happen. But I think Erickson's emphasis ends up being, rather than the alienation you see in First Law, where people's attempts at connecting usually or almost always fail,
Mhm.
Malazan is all about those connections that form and are transformative and change people. And they're the most beautiful moments. They're the ones that make me tear up. And when people are reunited, or when they come to an understanding and they see the humanity in each other,
Yeah.
uh, that's a hallmark of Malazan.
I
So
need
for
to
that
get to
reason,
God's Not
yeah.
Willing. That has bridge burners in it, right?
Oh, the God is not willing.
Yeah.
So
Or does, maybe
Marines,
I.
it has Marines in it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, bridge burners are, technically speaking, they're
For sure.
gone.
I couldn't
There
remember where it was
is
timeline.
there
It happens after the main series. Is that where it
it's
takes place?
after, yeah, it's about a
Oh, okay.
decade after the main series, but there is a bridge burner in there. I won't say more than that because I don't want to
Okay.
do spoilers, but there is a bridge burner in there, and I
Okay.
don't think that's a spoiler because it's pretty immediately evident. Um, but yes, but yeah, it's after
Okay.
the series. So yeah,
I
but
want
that
to do Carcanis as well because deals with the Animander Rake and his folks, right?
Yeah, Animander Rake. If you want to know Animander Rake, I would say that Carcanus is essential.
Yeah.
And it deals with the Teist
Mhm.
before they were the Teist Endi and the
Okay.
Teist Leosan and Teist Edur.
Ed-
So it's just the Teist at first.
Oh,
So
okay. Oh, it was before they split. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. In a way, it is. You could describe Carcanus as the story of the Teist splitting, in a way. So
Okay. And then book 3 for that he's working on right now. Is that right? Or
so Walk in Shadow is, I think that's going to be after the second book in the Witness trilogy.
oh, okay.
So the Witness trilogy, the first one being The
Yeah.
God Is Not Willing. I
Gotcha.
think he's. At one point, I know he was working on like 3 or maybe even 4 books at once.
Crazy.
But I believe that just in the discussion last night, it was probably after you left, but
Yeah, I think
he
so.
mentioned that he's going to finish book 2 of the Witness trilogy first.
Okay.
And then it has to go through what they do to it at a publishing house, and that's a long process, and he'll have
Yeah.
to, blah blah blah, and then he's going to work on the third book in Carcanus, which is a Walk in Shadow,
Okay.
which is going to answer a ton. I think it's going to answer a ton of questions that fans have been sort of wondering about for many, many years. So
I would be surprised if it didn't introduce some new ones as well. That's just seems to be kind of the
I
case.
think so. I think Steven Erikson and Ian Esselmont are always going to have their little secrets. They're not gonna give us the. And would we actually be satisfied if we knew everything? I doubt it. Right?
No, definitely not. I like some mystery. I like some ambiguity. That makes things better for me.
Yeah, but I would definitely say if you're an Animander Rake fan and you want to know him more,
Mhm.
then Carcanus is definitely something you should try. And
Okay.
it is tonally different from the Malazan Book of the Fallen in some ways. I love it. I think it is just brilliant stuff. But it wasn't for me anyway, a quick read. It was definitely a read that I had to engage with.
Nothing by either of these gentlemen is a quick read for me.
Yeah.
I did Path to Ascendancy, the first couple of them, and I really enjoyed those.
Cool.
I need to get back to those. I read Knight of Knives, and I didn't love that, but
Okay.
I need to read the rest of the novels of the Malazan Empire as well.
Great. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Esselmont's, and I think that his books are awesome in and of themselves, but they also have added a ton to my appreciation of
for
the
sure.
Book of the Fallen and the whole Malazan world. And I feel like as I finished my reread of the Malazan Book of the Fallen and my read of everything else, because what I did was I read the Malazan Book of the Fallen years before I knew anything about BookTube or started a channel.
Sure.
And I thought, I have to reread this, but will it help me to read all the other stuff first or concurrently? And so I thought, okay, I'm going to read the background stuff. So I read Carcanus and I read Paths to Ascendancy, and I reviewed those on the channel as preparation for my reread / read, because I was going to include this time the novels of the Malazan Empire by Ian Esselmont. And now I'm done. I'm done everything. I've also read The God Is Not Willing and the Bokeling and Corbel Broach novellas. So I've read everything those two have published.
I gotta check the novellas out. I enjoy both of those characters, especially in Memories of Ice. So
if you enjoyed them in Memories of Ice, I think you'll have fun in the novellas. It is Steven Erikson doing his absurdist humor. I mean, he absolutely just goes for it in those novellas. They are weird and incredibly crazy. And I had a ton of fun reading them. I will
get to it. I'm not sure when, but I'll definitely get to it. So there's a lot in the backlog right now. I'm restarting Game of Thrones fresh on January 1st, probably.
Oh, okay.
I know that Joanna and Yolene are doing a read along big read along for BookTube. So I'll be
Cool.
jumping.
Cool. Oh, that'll be great. Yeah. Yeah. I probably won't have time to join in that, but I'll be paying attention because again, I do love that series.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you ever do get to the Bocaline and Crumble Brooch, I suspect you'll enjoy it because if you like Malazan humor,
Yep.
there's plenty of it there. So
Especially humor with those guys, like that just goes without saying. So
yeah. So good, cool. Yeah, I suspect that'll be a fun trip, and they're not long either. So you can't say that of too many Malazan books, but the Bocaline and Crumble Brooch novellas, they are novellas. Although probably they'd be novels for most other authors.
yeah.
but they're much shorter. So cool. Well, you brought up A Song of Ice and Fire again, so I feel like it's time for me to ask you about. I know that you and Madison are chatting with Mike every week, is it?
Monday nights, yep.
And every Monday night, and you're calling the segment, what did Mike call it?
Throne Zone.
The Thrones Zone.
Yeah.
That guy, I gotta tell you, Mike is brilliant at a lot of things, and one of them is coming up with cool titles.
Yes, he's really
so in
good.
fact, I have to acknowledge he came up with the title for this series.
I remember, yeah.
Dear Dr. Fantasy. This is Mike's thing. So I love the title. And I am curious to hear your thoughts on the show, the series that people are talking about a lot. So The House of the Dragon. Share with me what you think. 'Cause I had not seen an episode yet. I don't have HBO. So it's something I'll probably be late to the party as usual. But if you can convince me, Scott, maybe I'll check it out sooner.
So I guess my first question would be, have you read Fire and Blood? That would be the first.
Yeah, okay. I've read Fire and Blood. Yeah.
Okay. So that's what it's adapting. So it's adapting the Dance of the Dragons that is detailed within Fire and Blood. And I adore that book. I know many people don't because it's not what they wanted. But I ate it the day that it was released. I ripped through it.
Interesting.
I love it. So
let's talk about the book a little then before we get into the show. Yeah, because I liked it because I'm a fan of A Song of Ice and Fire, and I loved getting the background.
Yeah.
But I've always felt that I would never want somebody who hasn't read A Song of Ice and Fire to start with Fire and Blood, because it's not, to me, it's not great storytelling. It's cool world building. If you're invested in that world, you're probably going to enjoy Fire and Blood, but it is not Martin's greatest storytelling. It is really dry, historical. He's posing. There's some fun in there. There's some fun, but it's not what you get in A Song of Ice and Fire. It's not that kind of storytelling, is it?
No, it's not. But he's doing something different with it.
Yeah.
He's making a fictional historical account.
Yeah.
And I love it because it's not one straight through line like this is what happened.
Right.
It's two or three people arguing about what might have happened.
Yeah. That's cool. And Martin's historically astute enough to know that history is notoriously unreliable, right? So he has fun with that there.
Yeah, I like it a lot. And I like hearing about Jaehaerys, the old king. I love all the stuff, obviously, with the Dance of the Dragons. It's being adapted. I like hearing about houses like the Starks and what they were like hundreds of years prior to the main story. So for me, it was wonderful. And I tell people, and I mean this, I'm just as excited for the second part of that as I am for Winds of Winter. Like, really? I want Blood and Fire just as much as I want Winds of Winter.
Yeah, because Fire and Blood is just part one of this narrative, the story of the Targaryens, or the background to the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. So yeah, cool.
We still have 150 years or whatever to go until Mad King Aerys that is going to be detailed in the second part. So
right. So
I love all that stuff. So I've been probably more excited about House of the Dragon than any other fan ever, because it's adapting what I love. Ramin Djawadi is my favorite composer, and they brought him back to do the musical score.
Brilliant. Good choice there.
He's so good. Ryan Condal, the other showrunner, is basically a George fanatic, and in his steps. He learned how to write at the feet of George, basically, and
Good.
had direct line to George to, hey, I want to do this, or should I do that, type of thing.
Even better. Yeah.
The writing is impeccable on this show. It's been so good.
Yeah. And I will say
some
too
of the stuff.
that,
Oh, go
sorry.
ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say too, back on the book for a moment. I do think that, because you were talking about the writing for the show, and you made me think about how the book is actually almost ideal source material.
Yeah.
Because you don't have really richly sketched characters.
Right.
It's dry history, so you get the bare descriptions of the characters, and it's up to the reader to sort of think about their motives, what's going on in here. So that's actually good for an adaptation, because you won't have lots of angry fans saying, "Oh, you ruined my favorite character," or "I don't like this interpretation," because it's very much more open to interpretation, I think.
It's true.
So that makes it really conducive, I think, to adaptation in that sense. But
I do too. And if there are conflicting accounts, they can choose whichever path they want, or they can choose an entirely separate one that wasn't detailed, which I think is really cool too.
More freedom, more freedom. Yeah.
A lot of freedom of choice. There's not much dialogue, obviously, within Fire and Blood.
Right.
So that's what I was really, I've been trying to listen for, and the dialogue has been great in the show.
Oh, good, because Martin is great at dialogue, and a lot of the best lines from the show, Game of Thrones, are straight out of the books, right?
Yeah.
So good. Yeah.
It feels a lot to me like kind of peak season 3 and 4, when it was just on top of the world. Like, these episodes feel like when it had hit its stride and it was already super popular and in the zeitgeist. That's what it feels like so far, 2 episodes in. The dragons look incredible.
So the visual aspects are really good.
Philip, unbelievable.
Wow.
The costuming, all of that stuff is great. The acting has been next level. Paddy Considine, who plays Viserys, that's kind of a throwaway character in the book. If you remember Viserys in the book, he's just kind of the people pleaser that's just trying to make his way and not ruffle any feathers, and everybody be happy. And he adds just so much nuance to it. Matt Smith as Daemon is unbelievable.
Wow. So the acting is good too, you're saying?
Incredible. I mean, we're 2 episodes in, so who knows? But I'm really enjoying it. And not to do a direct comparison between the two, but I've also watched the first 2 episodes of Rings of Power.
Rings of Power,
And I like some of what it's doing, and I like some of the performances, but that's the key. It's some of it I like, and a lot of it feels like they needed filler, to me. And maybe it's just not my thing. I don't know. Maybe it's just not the period of time within the Legendarium that I care that much about. I don't know. But it's to me a very, very clear which series is better for me.
But you love House of the Dragon, so
I do. Yeah. I'm very much enjoying it. I had Elevate, like, this is going to be one of my favorite shows ever, and I think it's exceeded my expectations.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm excited to be talking about it each week. It's been fun.
Yeah, that is so cool that you're doing that with Mike and Madison. And I will tune in eventually.
Yeah.
But I haven't had time because I'm so busy with the beginning of the semester to actually watch you guys. But I'm going to go back and watch the first couple episodes and see. And if you guys, it sounds like some major enthusiasm there. So it's one I will have to watch eventually.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to, I haven't yet watched, but I'm actually going to watch Rings of Power.
Yeah.
Because I do have Amazon.
Yeah, you've already got it.
I don't have HBO. Basically, that was the deciding factor. I don't have HBO, but I do have Amazon Prime.
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
But I am excited to see that too, and see how I like it. And I'm actually going to be talking about Rings of Power. I think fewer people are talking about Rings of Power.
Yeah.
Than are talking about House of the Dragon. So I'll be in the minority there, but
I think that's good. I like a lot of what they're doing. Like the Elrond character, I really, really like.
Cool.
If you remember young Ned Stark at the Tower of Joy scene. It's
Yeah.
that actor in Elrond.
Oh, the same actor. Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Huh.
And he's really good. I'm enjoying what we're doing with his character. Excuse me. I like the dwarves. They show kind of Khazad-dûm at its height, at its peak, and
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
So that I really like. But I haven't been in love with what they've been doing with Galadriel's character so far.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
maybe that will change. I don't know, but so far I haven't
Yeah.
enjoyed that. That's been a fair part of the series. And then there's the
it would be very hard, I have to say, to step into shoes that Kate Blanchett has worn, right?
True. Yeah.
That would be
I
tough.
think the actress is doing fine. I just don't like the way they've written her, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. We'll see then. Yeah. Huh.
We'll see.
Cool. Well, we'll see. And you have read the Silmarillion as well, or?
I haven't. So I tried.
Oh, okay.
I tried when I was much younger, and I made it a little ways. I'm like, this is like reading the first part of Genesis. This is this father. And so I was much younger. So I'm gonna try again. I need to figure out when that's gonna happen. So
yeah, it was so much fun to watch the Gwyn brothers, where you know that Will is a huge fan of the Silmarillion.
Ed, not so.
And Ed, basically at the instigation of his younger brother, fairly recently read the Silmarillion, and his reaction, it wasn't negative, but it wasn't like as enthusiastic as
I love those two. They're great.
There's so much. Just, I mean, first of all, they're incredibly well read.
Yeah.
But secondly, one of the things I enjoy the most about their channel is that dynamic between the two of them. And
it's fun.
It's so much fun to watch them. And they don't always have exactly the same opinions, right?
Which is good. I think it'd be fun if they did. So that's good. Yeah.
So Ed, I think, was comparing reading the Silmarillion to reading the Bible or something like that. And it's
what it felt like to me. But again, I was much younger, so who knows what I would experience now. I just need to make time to do it because I want to do that. I want to do Unfinished Tales. I'd like to read through some of the history of Middle Earth. I haven't gotten around to it yet. Made it a priority. So
cool. Well, I've read the Silmarillion, I don't even know how many times. But I understand that Rings of Power is not actually based on anything directly in the Silmarillion either.
No, they have the rights to, my understanding, they have the rights to The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, and the appendices. And they're
more based on the appendices.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Even though it's set in the Second Age, is that what it is? Or
Second Age, I believe, yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to figure that out before I start watching.
I'm the furthest thing from a Tolkien historian. Like, I adore it, and it's one of my favorite things. But like, people need to know what happened when and this happened. Like, I don't have the memory for it. I don't think. I'm not.
Yeah. No, I mean, there are people who really get into all that, and that's great. They love that.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've read most of the supplemental stuff. But it's been years and years. So I've read the Silmarillion many times, and I read the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings many times, and I've read all the other stuff once, basically.
Sure.
So I'm not and it's been a long time since I've read most of it. So it's all pretty fuzzy for me. Yeah. And I could spend all my time reading all that stuff, but there are so many other series to read.
Yeah. Too many good things to do. I love rereading. It's one of my favorite things. But every time I'm doing it, I'm like, I could be discovering something new. So part of me feels a little guilty, I guess. Maybe I shouldn't. But I love rereads. I love seeing kind of things happening in reverse, if that makes sense. Like, oh, this is why that happened later on, 3 books later, and being able to see the connections and stuff as they go instead of having to look at them in the rear view. I like that kind of stuff.
I'm totally with you, Scott. I think that rereading is important even. It's a good thing to mix in some rereads with all your new reads because you're not the same person that you were when you read it the first time, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So you've gone through some life and you have changed and you have different experiences that will mean that you will experience that text in a new way.
Yeah.
So that could be a very different read the second time. And sometimes you're going to like the book better. Sometimes you won't like it as much. And sometimes you'll
Sure.
just feel like, oh, you'll understand aspects of it that you didn't maybe the first time.
Yeah.
So you may like it for different reasons, you know. So rereading is cool. Yeah. And I often feel like I don't really know a book until I've read it a couple times.
Yeah,
At
I think that's
least.
probably fair.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
think
there's
one of
certain
the
books
things
and you know, right? You read many times and you're still finding new stuff.
that's true. One of the things I really love about audiobooks, which I'm a huge, massive fan of, is
Yeah.
that it allows me to go back and reread some things kind of in my downtime. So
Yeah. Huh.
I like to immersively read, so I like to read it while I'm listening. But if I just, hey, I feel like revisiting Lies of Locke Lamora, I can just throw my audiobook on in my downtime and just, you know, listen to it because I know the story, I know the main
Yeah.
beats, and it's just kind of fun to hear it after the
That probably would work. Yeah, Lies of Lockmore is a great book. I love it too. I actually like all three
I do too.
Gentleman Bastard books. I love them actually.
I think he's a very underrated writer. I think he is very, very good. Scott
I,
Lynch is.
yeah, I think the fact that he hasn't been able to continue yet in the series, although I understand he has a novella coming out soon.
Yeah, he's working on it. Yeah, it should
Yeah,
be fun.
I hope that when he does get that out and maybe the next book, there'll be more attention paid to the first three because they are brilliant. So
I listened to him. So Brian McClellan, who does the Powder Mage trilogy and some other
Mhm.
stuff, he does a podcast that I really like where he brings.
Okay.
It's called the Page Turner, Page something, and he had Lynch on. He's had Hobb on. He's had a bunch of big authors on. Sanderson, because
Cool.
he and
Wow.
those friends. But the Lynch one was interesting, and I don't know if interesting is the right word, but part of the reason Lynch has had so much trouble these last few years is he's writing, but he's just paralyzed at the point where he's going to show somebody else the writing. For
Uh-huh.
whatever reason, he's got some mental block where he doesn't want anyone else to see it.
Right.
So I don't know if it's a perfectionism thing. I don't know if it's something else, but that's the hurdle he's trying to get past right now from a mental health
Interesting.
perspective. So,
Interesting. I think that's a thing, you know,
mhm,
if a writer has a fairly successful debut, let's say,
mhm,
and the next book gets more criticism,
sure.
that can create some fear and some
I'm
doubt.
sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't fully understand the psychological pressure that writers are under. And, you know, as much as you hear that, you know, if you're going to be a writer, you got to have thick skin. You know,
Yeah.
you have to be able to deal with the fact that some people are not going to like your books.
Yeah.
So, but it's easy to just say that, and then but to actually experience it, like someone like Patrick Rothfuss, which I suspect, I don't know, I'm just totally conjecturing here, but I suspect that some of his reluctance, whatever it might be, maybe he's not. I don't know what's going on with him, but
Sure.
I do have the impression that the Name of the Wind was hugely successful. I mean,
Mhm.
just created all kinds of big expectations, and whether
Which
you
is
like
another
it or
book in the
not.
series, Door. Yes.
Yeah, and so here, I mean, it was like talked up to here, whether
Yeah.
you like it or not. I mean, you have to acknowledge it had both huge critical and popular success.
Yep.
Whereas the second book, The Wise Man's Fear, I mean, people liked it, but I think it got more criticism.
It did. I
Because
love it
it's,
as
I love it
well.
too. I love it too. I think it's great. Do I like it as much as I like The Name of the Wind? I think maybe I could criticize the pacing a little bit, and
Yeah.
the fact that the plot doesn't go very far, and it's a bigger book. So you know, but it's still a great book. But Patrick Rothfuss hears, oh, Name of the Wind up here, and then Wise Man's Fear, maybe not, and then that creates doubt, right? That creates fear, and I think it could, in some cases, be paralyzing. And maybe Scott Lynch went through something like that, because I think
Agree.
I don't have a firm impression of this, but I think that The Lies of Locke Lamora probably got tons of praise, whereas the second and the third books a little bit less so. And so the writer might be thinking, oh, am I going to just go downhill from here? You know, did I do my best? And it just creates all kinds of doubt, right? So
I think uh, I think with Red Seas Under Red Skies, I love it, but I think people that aren't into ships and sailing probably are going to have some trouble.
There's a lot of nautical terms and stuff in
Yeah,
there.
I love all that stuff, but
I love all three too. I love all three. Republic of Thieves as well, and just
really
to
good.
me, the relationship between Jean and Locke is one of the most brilliantly portrayed
So
friendships in literature. So I hope very much that we'll get the rest of this. He says 7. That would be awesome because he's such a talented writer.
so good.
But yeah, so you were talking about audiobooks a moment ago, and I have a confession. I suck at audiobooks.
It's not. It's not a matter of it's fine. So it's not for everybody. Some people just prefer visual versus audio. I like both mediums a lot, and I like to mix them up. But nobody says you have to enjoy audio. Like it's not a requirement. So not anything to be ashamed of, or nothing. If you tried it and it's not for you, that's fine.
I don't know. I mean, I'd like to try more. And it's really almost embarrassing for me to admit this because the audiobook that I chose is one that's incredibly dear to me. And I love the narrator. I think he's brilliant. And it seemed like an obvious thing to do. So I chose The Fellowship of the Ring, narrated by Andy Serkis. My first audiobook. And you think win-win there, right? But I find it, and I do enjoy listening to it in small doses, but I find myself drifting every time. Like
I get it.
I was doing it before bed and I'd like fall asleep, and then I was trying to do it at other times, and it's like, oh crap, I missed what did he just say? And I had to rewind, and that's awkward for me anyway. And I just felt like I'm not really enjoying this as much as I hoped I would. I'm not enjoying it nearly as much as reading the book.
And that happens. That's fine. I think the reason I like to do things immersively is because I like to follow along and there's a really good feature of the Kindle app is that if you own the Audible and you own the Kindle, it kind of paces through it for you. So it highlights the word that they're reading as you go and flips the pages automatically, which is a feature I love and use all the time.
So yeah, when you say immersive reading, you're referring to listening to the audiobook while having the text in front of you. Yeah. I first heard about that from Jimmy from the Fantasy Network, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I think that could keep you
engaged.
Well, I was going to say, I could see where it would keep me, at a certain pace, and that would be actually probably a fast way to read. But I'm I'm always interested in the prose. I like to look at prose, and when I see a brilliant sentence, I stop and I go back and I read that sentence again. And I'm like, oh, look at that word there. I love this turn of phrase or whatever. So I'm kind of a slow reader that way, and I couldn't do that if I were doing immersive reading, right?
Well, I like to highlight passages along the way. So I'll have either on my iPhone or I'll have my Kindle Fire, and you highlight the passages along the way. And that's cool because I have it synced up with Goodreads. So then once you've read the book, you can post any of the highlights that you've made. So for most of the books that I have on my Goodreads profile, I've got the passages that were meaningful to me, and I can refer back to them, or somebody else can read them and stuff like that. So I like that a lot.
Oh, okay. Interesting. All right. Well, I haven't entirely given up. It's also a time.
It's not a necessity.
Yeah. I don't feel too guilty
to do anything. Just to be clear, it's all right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel too guilty about it, but I feel slightly like a failure because so many people in our community are like, I love audiobooks, and I'm like,
But you have to put that in perspective. There's also people in our community that enjoy a certain genre of book that others don't like. There's people that like certain TV shows and movies that others don't like. Like it's like anything else. There's preferences, right? So
yeah, this is true. And there are many people who can only experience these stories through audiobooks for various reasons. And I'm so glad that audiobooks exist and that people get to experience these stories that way. And there are some brilliant narrators like Andy Serkis,
He's
who
great.
obviously are great performers and add to people's experiences of a story.
Mhm.
But I need to practice.
It doesn't have to be a massive priority, but
No, it's not, and I don't have time because I have a job and I'm
yeah,
trying to
for
read a
sure.
lot of books and I'm trying to write and I'm trying to do lots of things. So yeah. So Scott, what are you excited for? What other than House of the Dragon? What are your reads that you're anticipating? What are you going to be covering on your channel?
Yeah, so I'm going back through and rereading Sun Eater right now, which is one of my absolute favorite series. I had Christopher Rocchio on my channel recently,
Yeah,
which
I
was really
saw
cool.
that. That's
Um,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, he's a great guy, and I will do anything to support him. I love his series. Ashes of Man comes out in December, but
Okay.
I have the advanced reader copy ready to go. So it's
How far along are we in Sun Eater? How many books are out?
Ashes of Man will be book 5,
Okay.
and 6 will be next year, and that should complete the series.
Oh, it's a 6-book series. Okay.
It
Okay.
was going to be 7 potentially, and that has shifted a little bit. So he's going to try and get everything wrapped up in
Hey, you
books.
know what? It usually goes the other way. So,
Mhm.
George Martin was going to write a trilogy,
Right.
and then it became, you know how that went. But that's what usually happens is it ends up being more books. So if he's going the other direction, hey, that's cool.
Well, it was originally going to be 5, I believe, and then
Oh, okay. So
Kingdoms of Death.
he did expand it.
Well,
Okay.
so here's what happened. So
Uh-huh.
because of COVID and the paper shortage,
Ah.
Kingdoms of Death and Ashes of Man got split into 2 books.
Oh,
And
okay.
then,
That's
so
not his
now
fault then. Yeah.
it's either going to be one huge book to end things up, or if they decide that needs to be split 2, that would be the difference. So,
Oh, okay. Okay. So not his fault. Yeah. All right.
no, no, Kingdoms of Death is by far the shortest of the books, and that's just
Uh-huh.
they told him he needed to split it up because of the paper shortage
Okay.
issues.
And
Similar
until
to Butcher had to do that with Dresden Files.
Oh,
With
interesting. Interesting.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I know which ones you're talking about. Yeah, they're
Peace Talks and Battleground, the most recent too.
yeah, interesting. So in the case of Christopher Rocchio's Sun
Mhm.
Eater books, I know it's science fiction, but it's more soft science fiction or
Yeah,
fantasy fans would like this, right?
I consider it fantasy.
Okay. Okay.
So it's space opera. And I don't you haven't read Red Rising.
No.
But there are a lot of parallels between the two,
Okay.
which is just incidental. They just have similar influences because
Yeah.
he's never read Red Rising, but um, it's a far future with a lot of Roman influence in it. I think you would really love Sun Eater because there's a lot of history, there's a lot of philosophy, there's
Hmm.
a lot of references that I understand intellectually and remember from my school days, but
Yeah.
like I'm not that close to it anymore.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of Ship of Theseus types of references that I think would appeal to you. Um,
Cool.
Jordan over at iWizard is also a big
Yeah.
fan of it. He's
Great
a
guy.
philosophy
Yeah.
teacher, so
He's very well read. Yeah,
yeah.
Jordan. Yeah, yeah. And so is
Um,
Christopher Rocchio. Obviously, I've heard him talk several times now, and he seems very thoughtful and very well read. And I'm sure I'm going to enjoy his books when I read them.
yeah,
And I won't. So I won't call Star Wars and Dune fantasy because I'll get in trouble with Mike. But, but would you say similar kind of? You were.
yeah. I tell
Yeah.
people that if they enjoy any of these, they'll like it. If they like Star Wars, if they like Dune,
Okay.
Dune is one of his major influences. He's
Okay.
very
Okay.
upfront about that. He loves Frank Herbert.
Okay.
His favorite writer is Tolkien, and he's
Ah.
read Lord of the Rings probably 50 times,
Well,
100
then I
times.
already love the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of Tolkien in the books necessarily, but I'm sure it's
Wow.
there, and I just don't see it. But if you like either of those, if you like Gladiator, there's some definitely Gladiator
Oh,
type of
cool.
book.
The film,
Uh,
maybe.
yeah,
Yeah.
or anything that deals with the Colosseum and guys trying to excuse me hurt each other. So
Yeah.
uh,
Okay. Well, lots
he
of people are
becomes
watching. Yeah.
in the first book, he becomes a gladiator basically out of survival. So there's some of that
Okay.
fire of silence.
So that's a
So
kind of a Russell Crowe kind of thing
mhm,
then. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's a
So
great film. I mean, yeah, I
yeah.
love that film. Yeah.
So any of those and Red Rising fans, if they have read the books, I think would enjoy it because there's some of those Roman influences and stuff. So
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I've been reading a couple self-published fantasies that
mhm,
are Roman inspired.
mhm,
So that seems to be a thing.
yeah,
And maybe we'll see more and more of that. But cool. Yeah. Well, I like I said, I've got to find out how I'm going to enjoy Christopher Rocchio's books because I keep hearing so
his
many people.
writing is beautiful, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a huge Rockio fan. My first question to him was, "Have you read Robin Hobb?"
Uh-huh.
Because and he hasn't. So
Really? Okay.
anything that feels the same is just incidental. He hasn't.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
uh, I think your prose is the best I have read. His is
Wow.
not on par with her, but it's in my top 5 favorite prose of all time.
That's high praise. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's interesting how you can end up feeling like a certain other writer, even if you haven't read that author before.
Hmm.
That's an interesting phenomenon. And it happens to people. Yeah. Like,
Hmm.
as you know, I'm writing, and I've
Yeah,
a few people have read my first book, and
I'm jealous of them. Yeah,
yeah, well, and it was interesting because I actually asked some authors to read my first book,
yeah.
and
Mark Lawrence. That's
Mark
crazy.
Lawrence is one of them, and
Really.
he wrote some really lovely things about it. And he actually, and another one compared my writing to John Gwynn's, which I thought, wow,
Hmm.
okay, his storytelling, and I thought that was really fantastic because John
Yeah.
Gwynn, I had not read. Now I
Right.
have everything that John Gwynn has published, but when
Yeah.
I wrote the books, I had never read John Gwynn before. I had not heard of John Gwynn.
Yeah.
But John Gwynn and I have a lot of overlap when it comes
For
to
sure.
our inspirations.
Yeah.
So I'm thrilled when somebody says, "Oh, this reminds me of John Gwynn," because
Yeah. It's
we're
big
both
praise.
tapping from similar sources, including
Mm,
Tolkien and Old English and Old Norse and stuff
sure.
like that. So I'm sure something similar happened with Christopher
Yeah.
Rocchio and Robin Hobb, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hobb is famously a massive Tolkien fan as well. So that,
Yeah. Yeah. There aren't too many people in fantasy who are not, on some level
sure.
at least, Tolkien aficionados. There are some, I'm sure, who would say, I haven't
Sure.
read Tolkien, or yeah, I read Tolkien, it was okay, or that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
they'd be in the minority, I suspect. So
Yeah, for sure. So
cool.
that's what I'm looking forward to is if
Yeah.
I had restarted rereading it, I would be reading the arc right now, but
Uh-huh.
I'm just too much fun with the reread. I'm going to see it through. So that'd be most of this month.
Nice, nice. And when you finish up, do you think maybe you'd get a chance to talk to Christopher Rocchio again?
Yeah, I mean, I could ask him. Yeah, I don't think he'd say no, but
Yeah.
yeah, it might be fun to do a, I don't know, kind of a non-spoiler slash spoiler type of talk. Kind of split
Mhm.
it up that way. So
Cool, cool, very nice. So what else are you excited about, or what are the things that are on your radar, maybe a little bit further down the line that you're thinking, oh,
yeah, I'm going to be doing R. Scott Baker also starting in January.
I need to read that. Darkness That Comes Before. I have it. I swore that I was going to read it in the summer, and I have very few days left.
I've
But
read the first one.
early
I
fall.
enjoyed the first one, Darkness That Comes Before. I just have never continued on.
Okay, okay.
And this was years ago, so I don't really remember much. So,
Yeah. Okay.
so
What's your
that'll
overall impression of it though? Was it kind of, did you find it to be as bleak as many people say, or?
it's pretty bleak. I think it gets bleaker as the series goes, but we'll see.
Ooh, okay.
It's pretty bleak.
Yeah.
Again, I don't remember a ton, but there were aspects of it I remember enjoying a lot, kind
Yeah.
of playing with cause and effect and these kinds of things that I thought was really cool at the time.
Cool. Yeah, there are some people on BookTube who are really into it, like Mark from Slowly
Yeah.
Read, and Jimmy,
Mhm.
again. So these are people I trust, and I'm sure
Sure.
that there's something there. So
Yep.
I'm looking forward to. A lot of people talk up Baker's writing as being just absolutely brilliant. So
It's good. Yeah,
yeah.
he knows how to write. And then Red Rising, Pierce Brown is doing his at least is it 2 books next year? I think 2 books.
Okay.
So I'll be reading that along with Mike on his channel starting in January as well.
Nice, nice. Wow. Yeah, I mean, there's so many series. I'll probably read Christopher Rocchio stuff before I read Red Rising.
I like Red Rising a lot. I
Okay.
love it. Like Red Rising is a pretty slow start for me, but once it starts to get to the 3rd book plus, that's when I really enjoy it. Sun Eater, I was bought in from page 1. So
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, then I don't have to ask which one you would persuade me to try first.
I would love to see you cover Empire of Silence on your channel. Like I just would really enjoy to see your take on it, because you're going to pick stuff out of it that I don't like. You'll see these historical connections and stuff that I don't. I'm like, oh, cool sword. Like I'm just not intellectual for some of this stuff. So, but
well, I'm sure there are things you pick up that I don't too. So I mean, it works both ways, and that's the beauty of BookTube, is that we all learn from each other for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing, I'm reading through the Matthew Corbett mystery series by Mccammon, Robert Mccammon.
Oh, okay. Mccammon again.
It's brilliant. It's so good. I did a review of Speaks the Nightbird, the first book in the series, and it's incredible. It's set in late 1600s, early 1700s, kind of pre-America.
Okay.
So it, some of it is very uncomfortable to read about, like, the slavery issue is front and center, and there are people talking about others as if they are not human and these kind of things. So some of that's very uncomfortable. And it's supposed to be. So it's supposed to make us confront that part of our past. So
sometimes reading should make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Cool. Really, and just a sort of a stupid question, but Boy's Life and Swan Song, are those fantasy or?
I would say, so I would quantify, not quantify, I would say that Swan Song is more horror. It's sort of a post-apocalyptic horror. You haven't read The Stand, I don't think, but they get a lot of comparisons. It's similar in structure, but I like Swan Song more. So in The Stand, it's about a super flu that wipes out 99% of the population. In Swan Song, it's about the same percentage of people wiped out. I don't think he gives a number, but it's a kind of nuclear weapon malfunction crisis type of thing in the aftermath of that. That has more horror elements, I would say. Boy's Life, if I had to categorize it, I would call it, and I think it's probably the only one I've read that would qualify as this, but kind of a magical realism almost.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
It's set in the 50s or 60s. I can't remember which decade. And it's a coming of age story down in kind of Alabama, kind of deep South Alabama. So again, he confronts a lot of issues with race and this kind of stuff in that book as well. But that one has hints of magic throughout it, but never overt enough to, say what's happening, I guess. Talks about kind of the magic of being a child and that kind of stuff. It's beautifully written. It's a wonderful book.
Lovely. Yeah.
So good. But that's how I would categorize both. I would say post-apocalyptic horror and magical realism.
Yeah.
And then Corbett is historical fiction. So that's what that series is.
Neat.
But even that has elements of horror. It's got elements of what feels like fantasy at times. He plays, it's kind of like King, where he doesn't kind of plant himself in one genre. It kind of crosses.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So, that's one of the things I loved about Dark Tower.
Yeah.
He doesn't care what genre you think this should be. He just does what he wants to do and
I love it.
Stuff.
So good.
And it's not just even like modern genre fiction. He'll go to Shakespeare, right? He'll go. Of course, the whole series started as a kind of a riff on Matthew Arnold's. Not Matthew Arnold. Sorry, Robert Browning's poem "Child Roll into the Dark Tower Came." So yeah, I mean, it's just crazy what he throws into this, and somehow he makes it work.
Yeah, it's at times it's very disjointed feeling, but I like that. I don't know. Books 2, 3, and 4 in Dark Tower are some of my favorite books I've ever read. Drawing of the Three, The Wastelands, and obviously Wizarding Glass. Like that string of books blew me away. So
yeah, cool. Well, this has been immensely fun. Is there anything else that you would like to tell my viewers about your channel, or what you're doing, and all that, why you're here and all that sort of thing?
I don't know what I'm doing most of the time. It's just me talking randomly about some stuff that I love. Like, there's no rhyme or reason to it. I am one of the bigger consumers of booktube probably that there is. I still watch way too much probably, and it feels like not enough because I never get to all the channels and all the videos that I want to.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
And then when I do watch it, then I feel pressured because I want to leave a comment because I want them to know I watch it. I want to interact, and so that takes up a lot of time, but which is not a bad thing. So in January, I decided I'll give this a whirl and just see how it goes, and it's been fun.
So it's still a fairly new channel. And seems to be going really well. I'm
having a good time.
You've had some great discussions. You've been, talking to people, and that's kind of what it's about, right? You throw yourself in here, and you get to talk to people and about the stuff we love, right? So
yeah, I think so. One of the reasons I'm so thankful to Mike is when I found his channel, it was like right at the height of the pandemic, March of 2020. Yeah. And it was I felt at a pretty low point at that time. Like, what's the world going to be? I don't understand what's happening, like all this stuff. And I found his channel almost by accident. And he's talking about Dresden Files and First Law, all this stuff that I love, that I thought I was on an island and nobody else knew what any of this was. So I'm so appreciative of him bringing kind of that spirit of things to booktube, I guess. And then Jimmy, famously, I don't know, was the second person ever to subscribe to my channel. He probably doesn't even know that. So
really, Jimmy was your second subscriber?
Yeah, I was just looking the other day. It was in October of 2021. So prior to even launching the channel, I was just doing some videos randomly, just unboxings and things of books, and he was the second person ever to subscribe. So
that's cool.
Just all these cool people. I found your channel very closely after I found Mike's channel, so it's been a really good time. There's so many people whose work I love. So
well, I am subscribed to your channel, though you won't see it because I don't publicly subscribe to anyone.
Okay, that's all right.
But I am subscribed, and I will definitely tell my viewers, please check out Scott's channel, The Bald Booktuber, which I will have linked in the description below. But what a pleasure to talk to you. And I also want to tell you, you are rocking the jacket today.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah. I'm in second place on the call as far as dressing, but I wanted it to be competitive, so I did my best.
I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. I guess this is sort of my brand. And once in a while, my friends have a little fun, like Mike did once.
That was good.
Did a little Philip Chase imitation. He somehow even got the inflection of my voice when he did that. Pretty good. He had the glasses, of course. Yeah, it was pretty clever. Thank you, Mike. But anyway, thank you so much, Scott.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Fun. I love talking about books, especially with cool and nice and lovely people like you.
Thank you.
And it's great to be part of this community. So thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for watching this. And until next time.